Good morning. Good morning, gentlemen. There are no other ladies in the room other than me, so good morning to you all. Welcome to the Prosperous Overview and Scrutiny Committee of today's date, Thursday the 7th of July. We'll get straight on with the agenda. Apologies, Jonathan.
I have apologies from Vice Chairman Ross Ward, who's contracted COVID, unfortunately. We've had apologies from Philippa Hayden and Philip Hudson.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further apologies that we know about? No, we're all here. The next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Are there any to declare? No? Item 3 then is the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of June 2022. Are you happy for me to sign those as a true record? Proposed by Councillor Graham Hutton. We have a seconder for those. Peter. Thank you. And we'll move on to item 4, which is Highways Transformation Programme, 3 Strands Progress, oral report of Cabinet Member for Highways and Transport. Over to you, David Williams.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're well. Thank you for this. Today we've got a short presentation that I'm going to hand over to David Walters on. And then we will open for questions afterwards. I have to say that the transformation programme for highways is going through very well. Our changes are being utilised and accepted, and actually because we have worked with the people on the ground all the way up, we haven't done it in isolation or a silo working, as people I'd like to call it. We're bringing those people with us, and they are giving us great ideas and great support, and I think you will be seeing that out on the ground now and for the foreseeable future. So we'll just go through the transformation program. David will take it on because my eyes can't see that, and we'll take any questions after.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Thank you, Chair. Firstly, apologies that the slides we haven't been able to circulate them in advance. It's quite a fast-moving programme, and some of the slides, actually, we were only preparing last night because of changes to what we're doing, and we really wanted to give you the latest picture, particularly some of the latest slides on the right first time pilots and the work stack reduction. So, just a reminder, hopefully it'll move on to the next slide. Oh, there we go. Right, okay. Oh, gone too far now. Do you want to go? I'll ask Jonathan. Can you go back to the second slide? Might be easier if I ask Jonathan to do it. Go back one previous, please. Okay, so just as a reminder, we've set quite an ambitious vision for the service over the next 5 years, founded on 2 key principles. One, to deliver an excellent customer experience, and secondly, to improve the quality of our roads. And we're doing that through 3 main strands, and those are the 3 elements that we're going to give you an update on today. Okay, so 3 main strands that we're going to focus on. Firstly, future highways delivery model. So that's about deciding what happens at year 10. That's 2024 with the current partnership arrangement, and I know you had an update on that last time, and I'll give you a little bit more update that shortly. Second is what we're doing now to transform our offer now and to be ready for the future, and then finally where we are with the highway investment strategy, which is £15.5 million worth of capital investment and additional revenue investment this year. Wait for the next slide. Go on, Jonathan, I'll let you move it on. Might be easier. So just briefly in terms of future delivery models, Yeah, we gave you an update on that around about 3 weeks ago. We are still on track for the Cabinet decision in July on the future operating model and the strategic partnership. We've engaged with over 300 staff. In the meantime, they're all very positive about the vision, the investment and new ways of working. We've seen a number of staff transfer from Amy in April back to the County Council, around about 38 staff transferred, and we've got a number of ongoing activities as part of the pilots and as part of the additional investment. But as I say, I'll give more details of that in the next part of the presentation. So if we can move on to the next slide, please, Jonathan. Okay, so just a reminder of the future hybrid operating model. As I say, I think James went through this at the last meeting as well. So just a quick reminder, this intends to take the best parts out of our current operating model. We've actually looked at, I think we started with around about 17 different models that are in use across the sector, and what we've honed in on is the main ones that we thought would give us best in class for Staffordshire. They're very much focused around having a strategic delivery partner to do a significant amount of our highway activity. That gives us resilience, scale of economy, and a lot of commercial buying power. But that does tend to mean that to make sure we get the best out of that model, that those arrangements generally tend to have to last for a number of years, 2 years or more typically, because you're investing in plant and fleet and equipment. Alongside that, we are strengthening the client and our commissioning capability. The transfer of the staff back from Amy, the 38 staff back from Amy in April is part of that. That will give us greater control, greater oversight and assurance, and combined with our highway investment, we will strengthen those teams further to allow us to focus more on those in the future. Big part of the principle is what we call functional level commissioning. So that means service by service or activity by activity. We have a very clear focus on specification, on finance, on service levels, on quality, on customer and on value for money. So they are the core principles that we describe in our hybrid operating model. Next slide, please, Jonathan. So what does that mean in practice? And again, I think James has talked you through this model before. So Cabinet set the budget, the strategy, the operational priorities, with the portfolio holders obviously giving that key governance. We then have a commissioning client, as I referred to a minute or so ago. That's about strengthening our control on specification, on budget, on service level, with a parallel improvement programme, with stronger performance management, focusing on customer quality and value for money. It's a flexible model, so different types of our assets, different types of our functions. For example, street lighting. Street lighting is already delivered through a private finance initiative. We have separate contracts in place for our traffic signals and our urban traffic control systems. So that diagram just really gives you an overview of that. What we've actually done looking at the model as well is we've looked at other authorities that operate this model and who are generally seen to be front runners in the peer group. Lincolnshire and Leicestershire would be two of those, for example. They operate a very, very similar model to what we're describing on the screen there. Next slide, please, Jonathan. And the next one, please. So we'll just briefly look at what we've been doing in the last few weeks and months on transforming our offer now. So say at the meeting in June, we outlined the transfer of staff that had taken place, 38 people in asset management, inspections and claims, moved back to the County Council in April. That's been successfully achieved. It's no small feat to move 38 people from one organisation to another. That is the start of our strengthening our commissioning capability and to have more control over our key decisions. However, the main focus on day one was to make sure that we continued to be able to deliver those services. Our safety inspection services, our asset management and our programme delivery are really, really key. And we've managed to achieve that, and now we're starting to move on to look at what that means in terms of new ways of working. We've started our future state design work. That's looking at what additional capacity we need, where those roles will sit, what will be our new ways of working, what will be our new operating systems. We're well into that process at a very high level already. We will then start to look at how the organisational structure, how that follows those principles. What does that mean for our strengthened commissioning, our strengthened client, our strengthened contract management capabilities? And a key part of that also is making sure that we've got the community highways teams offer, because that's one of our two key strands. We've also got a number of other improvement activities already in train. We're well on with implementing a programme known as the Core Drainage Review. We're also implementing the learning from Informed Customer and our Informed Member pilots. We've got learning from our Gully Crew pilot, which is to give more local control and decision making to that. That again is feeding into our operating structure for the future. And we've just completed what was Live Labs 1. And one of the lessons that we're taking from that is how do we actually create an environment within Staffordshire to be even more innovative than we are now? How do we do that? What's the structure around that? What's the governance around that? So actually what we take is the learning from Live Labs, and it becomes part of our business as usual. The final bit, very, very important. We've got £15 million additional capital to spend this year. We want to be getting on and delivering that, and we are well on to doing that. And I'll give you a little bit more of an update on that in a second. Can you move it on again, please, Jonathan? So our extra investment strategy. So this is the capital and the revenue. It's based upon what the council can afford within the funding allocations in the medium-term financial strategy. It is still short of what we would describe as the optimum to maintain our assets at steady state. But it's definitely very welcome. And our approach about that additional spend on top of our base budget is to achieve the aims that we've set out on the slide there, mainly around our strategic improvement areas of customer quality, value for money, and our communities offer. Next slide, please, Jonathan. So there's two elements of the investment. There's £2 million revenue investment, which apart from the top one, which is to support the highway transformation, will be ongoing. So that will give us increased contract management capacity to provide greater oversight and assurance of our contract performance. We will invest in additional safety and quality inspectors, so that will help us to do everything from provide a more responsive service to the customer inquiries that we get, through to making sure that we are getting additional inspections on the quality of work being carried out by all our various providers. The community teams capacity, a big part of strengthening our community offer. That's in two parts. One is to mitigate what would have been an MTFS pressure of just over £250,000, which was added in a few years ago, and which would need to be achieved over the next couple of years. So we'll no longer need to do that, but it will also provide extra capacity to enable the new ways of working, and particularly directing that response to those local priorities. And then the final bit this year, one of the pilots we're going to do is to actually look at what a community response initiative would look like. And that will help us then to look at what would that cost to scale that initiative up across the whole of the county in future years to help inform the investment decisions from next year onwards. Next slide, please, Jonathan. So this is one of the slides that literally we were working on yesterday. So you'll be familiar with this from the cabinet paper. 5 main elements on there. Minor capital maintenance, that's already built into the budget. That's been ongoing from the 1st of April. And hopefully members are starting to see some difference on the ground in terms of pothole repairs and defect repairs that are going on. We've got the customer service system improvements, which our community teams are looking at. That's a one-off investment this year to look at how we can improve our customer service system. That could be anything from chatbots, AI, to people at the end of the phone, strengthening our ability to speak to people on the end of the phone. Tackling the winter work stack, we've got £2.5 million in there. That's slightly changed from last time because of some decisions around structural maintenance. We've got our customer focus right first time approach, which I'll give you some more detail on in a minute. And then we've got the investment in the asset. So we've got 1.3 million patching additional roads this year, which will then get preventative treatment in next year. And we've got £5.2 million on around 6 kilometres of structural repairs, mainly into our major towns, and we'll start to see that programme of work being delivered on the ground from September onwards. So there is some variance in that, the main one around the decisions around the investment in the asset. Next slide, please, Jonathan. So this is something that we've been working on, particularly, again, bringing together the skills of some of the teams that have joined us since April. So one of the principles of the future is what we call developing our right first time approach. And this year, the plan is to use that investment to pilot how we deliver right first time defect repairs across Staffordshire and what that would cost to embed them into our business usual processes in future years. So what do we mean by right first time? Well, we've looked at it from a customer perspective, and that's two main elements. So firstly, fixing places, not just defects. So we very much at the moment concentrate on our higher priority defects, which often means that some of our lower priority defects are not repaired as quickly as our customers would like and yourselves would like. And then secondly, the right extent of the repair for the location. So we have often been doing the minimum extent of repair. What we want to do is to look at, if we were to do larger repairs, how much extra would that cost? How do we get better at communicating with the public when the repair is in a life expired road, for example, and that road actually needs a complete resurfacing? How do we get better at communicating that and saying to people, this is a holding repair? So that's the two main elements that we want to change. They are quite a fundamental change to our current approach. We've been really focused on high priority defects, minimum levels of spend, and what we want to do through this right first time approach is to make sure that we've tested out what the future looks like and we understand from an operating point of view what it will cost us to move towards that. And we'll come back to you in September with some more details of those elements, but I just wanted to give you an update on that in terms of where we are. Next slide, please, Jonathan. So we have actually done some initial work around the right first time approach. As I say, our current process is mainly built upon that management of risk, staying within that very tight budget envelope. And we do see it crews repair defects, not places. We might go in and do a high priority repair in a road and then come back at a later date and do lower priority repairs. This is about what would it take to do all those together at the same time. We think, yeah, it comes at a cost. Our initial estimate was around about £7.5 million extra funding per year to do that. But this right first time pilot is intended to help us to understand more what that change of approach would cost us. So these last few slides are literally work we've been completed in the last few days. If you could move on to the next one, please, Jonathan. So what we've actually done is we've taken all our defect data, all our inquiries data, all our claims data, and we started at a very high level. Where's the hotspots across the county? You'll recognise those member divisions, hopefully. They are the hotspots based upon member divisions. Not too surprisingly, a lot of those are urban areas. So that is the average number of defects and enquiries per kilometre. So you can start to see where the hotspots are. They're not too unexpected. Probably one or two worried faces there going, my division's not in there. No, what we've actually done is then focused in on that in a lot more detail. That's just to give you a really big picture overview. So what we've actually done then is start to bring a whole load of separate data sets together. So if Jonathan could pop onto the next slide, please. So we've looked at road condition data. So that is the centre of Burton. Apologies, I've just picked a location that I probably know better than most. The blue and the green are roads that are generally in good condition, and the red and the amber are roads that are generally in a poorer condition. So that's a new piece of data that we obtained for the first time, a whole video survey of the whole of our county. So we've looked at that. That's one set of data we've looked at. If we go on to the next, if you kind of remember down in the bottom left, what looks like a load of terrace streets on there. So what we've then done is looked at what's our current preventative programme. So if we go to the next slide, please, Jonathan. So our current, and it's a slightly different zoom out, sorry. So our current preventative programme, that area that I highlighted, a lot of those roads in blue, that's our preventative maintenance programme for this year, our surface dressing programme for this year. So lots of the defects in that location, on carriageway, we will make sure are dealt with in part of that programme. So we've taken them out of the work stack. We said, let's not focus on those. They will be repaired as part of that preventative programme. What we've then finally done is pull all that data together. And again, I'll just show you one snapshot in Burton. We've divided the whole of the county into a series of grids. And although there are defects in other places, the areas in blue would be what we call our hotspots. That's where we've got that combination of most defects, most enquiries, and most claims. So we're calling those our hotspot locations. So what we're now doing with the operational teams is to start to focus on what would that look like on the ground? How will we go in and do multiple fixes, multiple repairs into those locations? How will we get the communication right to that so that the public of Staffordshire are aware this is part of our investment programme? And most fundamentally as well, for those hotspots, have we actually got those right? So a big part of this process is to start checking and sense checking this through our community teams, back with local members, to make sure that what we're seeing from the data is being reflected from what's going on the ground. That area in the centre, the large blue area, for example, for those of you that do know East Staffordshire and do know Burton, that is actually a main thoroughfare between two of the main shopping centres. It's also used as the transport interchange. It's where all the buses queue. It's where people pick the buses. So obviously, from a visibility point of view, a really good place to be going and actually doing those repairs. And they are a combination of repairs that would be footway repairs, curb repairs, carriageway repairs, ironwork repairs. Might not necessarily be able to go and do them all on the same day or same days, but they will be planned together wherever they can, and we'll go and tackle those hotspots. So that's the approach that we do. That literally is hot off the press. We've only finished work on that in the last few days. We're now starting to have those conversations with our operational delivery team about, so how will we now translate that into activity on the ground? And we would expect to start to see some of these activities within probably the next 6 to 8 weeks translated onto the ground. So that's it, thank you, Chair. That's so apologies again that the slides were last minute. We wanted to add these last few slides in, which we've only been able to do in the last day or so. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Are those slides available to be sent out to all
They
members?
are, yeah.
Okay. Just while I've got the microphone, the data that you've got there, so that's Burton upon Trent. Is that data available for all areas, or have you just picked Burton for now to see how it goes?
I've given that as an example, but the data is available for the whole of the county. We'll have to think how we can get it to you, because it's on the spatial mapping system, so we'll just need to make sure you can all see that.
On the previous slide, Tamworth was kind of not on there.
Yeah, no, it is all that.
We've got plenty of hotspot areas.
It is all.
For you.
It is the whole of the county. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, and I thank you for the work that's been done on that, because it's not easy to try and translate that from data to a slide. So I wouldn't have a clue how to do that. So I'll just invite members to ask questions if there are any. David, then Graham.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't disagree with anything which has been presented to us. I think there are some things like, if we look at the volume of problems raised by the community, that doesn't take account of the fact that in the villages you don't have many people, but you have lots of roads. So the one doesn't quite balance out with the other. I mean, I have the major problem within my division because I have a very, very long boundary with Birmingham and with Walsall. And that brings me on to the point about what we don't seem to have is an overriding strategy. If we work on the assumption that what we should look to do is to get every vehicle onto a major road at the earliest possible point, then my feeling is that we need to have a very positive strategy for how we are going to direct vehicles away from rat running. You know, when we start looking at the amount of work which needs to be done on the roads within my division, we have lanes that don't have proper foundations, so they break up very, very quickly. And if you put 2,000 vehicles a day onto a road where vehicles can barely pass, it's not surprising that the road breaks up quite quickly. And so it seems to me that at some sort of point we have to have a strategy that says our determination is to direct vehicles away from rat running and make rat running more difficult. That will then reduce the wear on the less important roads and allow us to concentrate on maintaining the quality of the major roads. And I know you can't do that overnight, but I think that if we have a positive strategy that says that's what our intention is, you know, we've got to stop things like Lichfield, who have just built 1,000 houses, and the most obvious route for them to access Birmingham, which a large proportion of them do, is along a very narrow lane. And that then goes on to another narrow lane and another narrow lane before it finally gets onto a major road. So I really think that we need an overriding strategy that supports what we're doing now, but starts to look at how we're going to deal with it. Thank you, Chairman.
David, did you want to come back?
Yeah, I mean, the strategy that Councillor Smith talks about is one where we're happy to work with the local teams and the local members to look at that. But obviously there's a huge cost implication with regards to putting in physical barriers or deterrents to suggest to people that they don't use, as you say, rat runs. But it's something that we're happy to work with and with local members going forward. So happy to take that one forward. Thank you.
Graham.
Thank you. One of the early slides had contract management. I think this is absolutely crucial to this. Recently referred to by an MP to me was some where we're doing up a road in my area. Great, lots of people on site. Amy actually doing a fantastic job, wooing all the people. Eon come along, replace the lampposts. One's not right, upset somebody. They just turned around and said, if you want it moved, it costs £1,000 and walked off. Well, you can imagine that isn't the right way to go about things. So I think how our local teams manage what's going on the ground so that this is a complaint that could have been avoided. And I think we need to make sure that our suppliers actually live up to the standards that we've heard that we're aiming at. So it's just something that I'm absolutely passionate about, is about good contract management so that they do what the Cabinet wants to see happening and what heads of highways wants to see happening, rather than what some probably low-level person in a contracting organisation thinks is the right way forward. I just think that's really important.
Yeah, thanks for that point. I mean, obviously, if there's issues going on with contractors or people from other organisations, if you let us know, we can do something about that. But one of the things is that from our staff point of view, they've been made aware of and this is the AMI staff and the contractors that we use for that they've been made aware of what we expect them to be like on the ground, and I know that they are doing that. When it comes to services and utilities, they are a little bit more difficult because due to the fact we have no governance over them. However, with the lighting contract, there is something where we can have an input on. So, yeah, but if any member has any issues like that, let me know, and we will definitely investigate and get to sorted what we can.
Michael.
Thank you, Chair. This isn't my area of expertise, so please excuse me if this is a naive question. But I came across a report in the papers within the last year, I think, of a machine which has been developed, which is a one-stop pothole repairer, which is absolutely brilliant at its work. It manages to do the pothole repair at a very high quality, at a much reduced time lapse. It's expensive, but it pays for itself in savings fairly rapidly. And I just wonder whether this machine has been investigated at all and is part of the strategy. I imagine that it's in great demand. I understand that counties across the country have been trying to get hold of one.
Presumably you're talking about the Pothole Pro. Yes, there's been lots of promotion on the Pothole Pro as a one-stop shop. It does a job, as in it will take the surface off and cut the edges and sweep it up. That's all it does. Doesn't fill the hole afterwards, doesn't do anything else. And actually from the quality of sides and cutting that we require for our repairs, it doesn't do that. That still has to be done. We've just completed a 2-week trial with the Pothole Pro on different roads in both North Staffordshire and Stafford. That's now being evaluated, and we're going back to JCB to talk to them about the machine and about possible improvements that we've found to it. One of the things is that, as I say, it doesn't do the job it's seen to claim to do, the one-stop shop, because it basically cuts and sweeps and then leaves it. That's all it can do. So it is expensive. It's £180,000 for the basic model. It's a piece of kit that was on a different chassis, and they've moved it to a new chassis now, because it can travel at up to 30 kilometres an hour. But I definitely wouldn't want to be going around a corner in it at 30 miles an hour because of how high it is. It's got some positives, it's got some negatives. We are now evaluating what we would use it for in the future if we were going to use it, and whether or not we would purchase or utilise it as a rental. Then that's part of our strategy, what we'd look at. But I'll only allow us to start getting any pieces of equipment if they're going to be useful to our arsenal, to make sure that we can do the best job as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
Are there any further questions on the transformation report? Speak now. Ian, put your microphone on, Ian.
Just a comment, if I may. You mentioned the local highway teams. I'm very lucky in the Moorlands. We have an excellent team and have had for the last 15 years. And they're very good, but they do seem to have problems with certain jobs. And I put the question to them, what's the problem there? And it's the people from Amy with the expertise who are in big demand, who have to spend the time out, But all in all, I think this year, or this season, term, if you like, Amy and the highways seem to have set the stall out very good. Our footpaths are a model for anybody to see. And of course the praise is heaped on the local councillor who accepts it with gratitude. But thank you, it's very good.
Thank you, Ian. It's good to hear a positive, and that's what we're trying to do. So with our transformation, we will be doing a reorganisation of the teams. The skims and the CHIOs, as they're called, will be gone. There will be highways managers and highways management teams and leaders. They will be managing their areas. They will be working with local members a lot more closely to ensure that members are, one, aware of what work's going on in their area so they can go down and look at it. They'll be working with the local members to ensure that it is through the local member all the time that what work is going on and where. And it will also be that we will utilise our new comms officer, who is Jen Whittaker, for highways. We also have a social media comms officer now. And both of them have been briefed in the fact that we will be doing more positive work out there to show exactly what we are doing. You are quite correct. And the focus from Amy has been focused by us, I will be honest, David and James and the team, because we've taken more control, and we have literally taken more control of what goes on and where and what we want done. You are right, Ian, in the fact that there are certain jobs that will take longer, because the engineers, which I have to say I think are renowned throughout the country from the seminars and the presentation evenings I've been to, the AMI engineers are renowned for how good they are. Their services are in need, but they do a great job for us, and I think they are trying to ensure that we can get the best that we can. And so one of the things when I took on the role was to say I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to make a real impact on what we can do. With the extra investment that we've been able to do this time, we have actually been able to halt the decline of our roads. We are addressing some of our red roads. It's only a small percentage. We have got financial issues, and obviously there's inflationary issues to put on top of that. But we are trying to get, and I have to say the team are working really hard to do this, to make sure that we can give the best productivity for our communities with the best value. David and his team, with the work they've done from the Geist with every single road in Staffordshire, to get that down to what they've done in small 1 metre squares, to be able to tell you what he tells over every piece of road and pathway in Staffordshire. Fantastic piece of work, and they have worked solidly at that, and that's why it is hot off the press. You're the first people to see it. Cabinet haven't. And I think it's a real bonus for us, because working with the local members, it'll be right. These are your hot spots. Which ones do you want to address? And that's where we'll make the real visual impact. From members' point of view as well, you have your DHP monies. I know it's not a lot of money, but one of the things that I'm trialling this year with my DHP is I've asked to see about the roadmaster being used on more of the estate roads. So where roads aren't frequently used by JCBs, for HGVs, the roadmaster's really, really useful. And actually, it can do 30, 40 potholes in a day because of that type of road. So I'm paying a few £1,000s out of my DHP to have 2 days, one in Penkridge and one in Huntington, to address Category 3 potholes on roads that aren't used by HGVs all the time. And that's extending what we are able to deliver. So if members want to do that, when it comes to your, when you get contacted about your hotspots, if you have any money left out of your DHP to get rid of some more Cat 3s, please utilise it. Utilise that roadmaster extra work, and we can get that in, and we can, as an extra resource, and we can get more potholes around the area done, and increase your impact. It's a really big part, and if you have parishes who want to contribute, fantastic. We'll do it. You know, we can get, the more money we can get, the more we can do. But at the same time, as obviously, it always goes through the local members. So, but thank you for your comments, Ian. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, David. And for me, I think we're already seeing the changes. When you report an issue now, when you get the report back, you get the before and after photographs, so you can see what's done. So for me, that's a tick exercise. You can see where the work's been done, and I'm really excited about this transformation, because it's a positive, it's a good news story, and I think we should be shouting about it. And I urge all members to work with their highways management teams, and I want the roadmaster in Tamworth. If I'm not on the hotspot areas, I'm going to get the roadmaster there. So if there are no further questions, thank you to David and the team for coming today. We always appreciate the highways updates, and we'll see you in September, did you say? I think it's September, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, okay. So thank you for your time this morning, and you're free to leave if you need to. Thank you. And we'll, while the gents are leaving, we'll move swiftly on to item 5, which is the HS2 connectivity with existing classic network. And I believe that they're coming in online. So, Jason, over to you.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. Thanks very much for the opportunity to come back to the committee. Just by way of introduction, I appreciate that I have attended these briefings before, but just to introduce myself, I'm Jason Pacey, work for HS2, and I head up the team delivering community and stakeholder engagement in the phase 2A section, so that's West Midlands up to Crewe. So to introduce the topic, we were asked several months ago if we could provide an update on rail connectivity within Staffordshire and what that might mean in the future with regards to HS2. So I think I set out at the time, HS2 is tasked with building the railway, but the operation and the service patterns that high-speed rail will deliver to the country will be determined and delivered by Avanti West Coast Partnership. So we reached out to the organisation and we've got Mark Osborne from Avanti West Coast who's pulled together some slides and he's happy to brief the committee on that particular topic. So I'm going to hand over to Mark now. Mark will happily answer any questions following his presentation relating to his topic. If there's anything specific to HS2, John Lord from phase 1 and myself more than happy to answer those separately. So I'll go off camera now and hand over to Mark. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Jason. Hope everyone can hear me all right. I can have a weird scenario of seeing myself in the room in the corner with everyone looking at me. I introduce myself. My name's Mark Osborne. I work for West Coast Partnership. I'll explain more about the business then. I'm a regional growth manager, so newly created post. I've only been with West Coast Partnerships for 18 months. I cover Cheshire and Staffordshire, as I like to call it, liaising with local stakeholders around there and trying to build those relationships, especially with the local authorities, about how we can maximise the benefits of services now on the railway, but also in the future when HS2 opens. So I've got some few slides. I hope it won't be a death by PowerPoint. I'll try to zip them through them quite quickly. So hopefully you will be seeing my screen now. I hope that is being shown. Please do speak up if not.
Mark, that's your diary.
Right. That's what I was concerned of, because that's what it seemed to be. Try again.
Well, at least we know when you're going on holiday now.
Yeah, I'm off tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Hopefully that's the one.
That's better.
Great. I'll click start. At the very start, who we are. So West Coast Partnership is the collective name for the franchise. You will see Avanti West Coast as the running the trains now, replacing the old Virgin Trains franchise. And in the background, I'm not sure I quite like the name Shadow Operator. It sounds like a terrible Marvel supervision. Is West Coast Partnership Development, who are working out what kind of rail services could run on HS2 and the West Coast Main Line once it's in operation. And obviously there's a phase build out of that as well. So firstly, talk about it's a challenging time on the railway, industrial action, and a real change in how people are travelling. People are travelling differently from work. Weekends have suddenly become the busiest time on the railways. People use their leisure time differently, and the railways are a very popular way of enjoying their people's leisure time. The growth of digital ticketing has been happening, but it's really accelerated in the last 2 years due to COVID, which brings challenges and opportunities as well. And the way of work is kind of really changing as well. People don't have a single place of work now. They find themselves working from home, working maybe 2 or 3 different offices. And we're seeing that as a long distance operator, as a way of people traveling for work, which is very much different from the traditional 9 to 5 in and out of a town or city centre. So the big thing that I've really been looking forward to talking to about what's happening for us now, Avanti West Coast, is our December 22 timetable, and especially what it means for Staffordshire, because it really brings a lot of hopeful benefits to the county. So on our service that runs from London via the West Midlands and up to Scotland, we will now be from December 22 in the timetable there, we'll be adding in Staffordshire. that will give Stafford a kind of direct service to the north that it probably really hasn't had recently. And for these, our service from Chester that runs to London, Stafford would now be a call on the route. So another service to London, but we're also providing connectivity towards Chester and North Wales. The service from Manchester Piccadilly will also now be calling at Stafford. So that will bring there'll be 2 fast trains to London from Stafford Station from December 22. Unfortunately, the Liverpool train won't be calling at Stafford any longer. The West Midlands trains will still provide that connectivity to Liverpool. But the real opportunity is, and I'm very happy about this as someone who lives in Liverpool, but originally from Tamworth, is that a second train from Liverpool will be added in from December 22 on a phased basis that will run Liverpool to London, but will call at Lichfield and Tamworth on an hourly basis. So you can expect, hopefully by this time next year, those 2 towns will have an hourly service to and from London up to Liverpool, really improving connectivity for the 2. So that's the kind of summary, just talking through there. Big change for Stafford. Before, from our services, you could only get to 4 locations, Euston, Crewe, Runcorn and Liverpool. But with these new change timetable, the number of destinations increases substantially, should we say, adding in Scotland, North Wales, those kind of main towns and cities in Lancashire and Cumbria. Also in the position of refurbishing all our existing trains. Major change throughout the whole train set, if you want to call it that, including for our 11-car trains, we're changing one of the first class seating arrangements to standard class, which overall creates almost equivalent of like 3 new trains in terms of seating capacity. And to provide those new services that we started from Liverpool and improving our services to Chester, we'll be buying new trains that are currently manufactured now from Hitachi. And we're hoping to have the first few ones of them in early next year. And obviously part of my role is to really kind of engage and provide that person to contact at a local level. And that's been really successful in talking to Stafford Borough Council and talking about how can we improve the forecourt outside Stafford Station. And that's led to them including a scheme within the High Street fund bid that they put in. We're currently investing at the station with our committed obligations. So there's new secure cycle parking just got in. The waiting room improvements will happen as part of the kind of refurbishment of the station. As part of the kind of the wider strategic vision, like the Stafford Gateway project, we're contributing funding to the study to decide what's needed at the station in terms of the western access and the additional facilities. We also fund the North Staffordshire Community Rail Partnership, and they've now added Stafford into their list of stations that they have volunteers and do engagement work at, and they're really keen to do something because it's now the 60th anniversary of the rebuild of the station at Stafford. Hopefully that gives you a real kind of idea where we are now and what we plan the next few years. And I know that obviously the big talk on this thing is about what this means for HS2 and the services there. So that whole list of services that we're proposing starting in December 22 is really kind of almost, we pushed the West Coast Main Line to its limit. And that kind of task is what we're doing now for HS2 and West Coast Main Line. What kind of services can we run and what places can have a higher level of service rather than having 1 train an hour to having 3 or 4? What places can be added to the network? What places can get faster services? And so we're in a process now of really starting from a big picture exercise, just looking at phases 1, phases 2A currently of high-speed network. And we've got about 30 different versions of timetables. So all those plans I've just quickly run through what we're doing December 22. There's 30 different versions of that we're proposing, we're taking to government, the DFT, and saying, here's some ideas. We've got some ideas of revenue potential of those different routes, what kind of service patterns will be run. Also trying to include that there's more freight paths on the existing lines to meet the growing demand for freight. So we're very early stage, and we're now kind of iterating those 30 options down to kind of a realistic 6. And those 6 will kind of be engaged with local stakeholders like yourselves. And then from that, there's the opportunity to do even kind of further work about, can we use HS2 for non-London services? So I've been talking to the MPs in Stoke, and they're very keen on an idea of a Birmingham, Staffordshire, Stoke to Manchester service using HS2 infrastructure. And there's potential of even further HS2 phases as the integrated rail plan kind of further develops in the coming years. We're not only just kind of looking at the network and what's on there, there's also the big challenge around what's the rolling stock, what kind of trains we're going to run on it. So HS2 are commissioning the trains that can be purchased, but we're providing that input. I mean, what happens on those trains? Do we have the same level of class that we have now, a standard premium or first class? Or could we do what our colleagues in Italy are doing, and they have this executive class with huge, comfortable, reclining seats, as you can see there in the picture, even meeting rooms, as you can see there in that other example. Also, what kind of food and beverage offer is provided on the train? Now, if a train can get from Liverpool to Birmingham in 45 minutes or less, you can have time for a cooked breakfast to be delivered to your seat. So there's a whole range of different challenges there. And also that, what we call the customer experience at the station. How do we make their journey to and from the station work better in terms of parking or access to bus and other public transport services? So we're looking at all the classic stations, as we call it, such as Stafford, and how those services, what facilities are needed there to support when HS2 arrives. And kind of my final slide, I know very concerned about what is HS2 going to bring in terms of services to Staffordshire. As a business, we're being told what to do by the DfT in terms of timetabling. That service is in there. There's a benchmark. There's kind of the base point to start for services. We see the Handsacre link as very important as part of that. So we see there's clear benefits to customers. Not only it enables Staffordshire, Stoke and Macclesfield to be added to the network, but it does give us more flexibility to develop the services I just talked about, in terms of planned services, but also in terms of operation importance. When things go wrong on the railway, unfortunately things still will, having more accessible network with different junctions allows us to amend and change services to meet unplanned events, but also to plan engineering work and other activities much more simply and effectively, and having less impact on day-to-day customers. So I hope that's okay as a bit of an information drop. I'm sure there's lots of questions, so happy to hear what people want to ask.
Thanks for that presentation, Mark. Very informative. Do any members have questions? Graham?
Thanks, Mark. An inquiry on your last slide, the Handsacre link slide.
Yeah.
You said on operational importance, provides a route on-off HS2 further south in the event of perturbation, creating a more flexible network. And you gave the example of access to Manchester avoiding crew. My understanding is HS2 trains will not run on the normal network, and we're having special trains that will run both. But they're going to stop at Macclesfield, those special trains. It'll be Macclesfield, Stoke, Stafford, and then on to the HS2. So how are you going to get from Manchester to Macclesfield, avoiding crew? You know, it's just not possible, is it?
The trains that are being bought for HS2 will be able to run on the classic network. Obviously, past Crewe and past Handsacre Junction, they'll be back onto the line as we know now. I mean, that example there is if something happened at Stoke, shall we say, that the train can leave at Handsacre Junction and travel on the existing line to Crewe and then Crewe into Manchester. Without having a junction, it becomes very challenging. You end up kind of just terminate services at Birmingham. explain?
No, but mine, I talk to HS2 a lot, and my understanding is HS2 trains that go directly from London to Manchester, when the link from Crewe to Manchester is built, will not run on the ordinary lines. I've raised this so many times, I've had so many conversations. Their engineers say HS2 trains have to travel on HS2 tracks, and they will bring in or alter current trains to run on the HS2 lines. So you put in there, you can access from Manchester, but I don't understand how you can run from Manchester to Macclesfield with an HS2 train, because there's no link.
Mark, do you want me to just come in there?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So just addressing the classic compatible question, there will be two types of rolling stock, new HS2 rolling stock. So there'll be the dedicated HS2 trains, which will run at full speed capacity on the HS2 new network. Then there will be the classic compatibles, which have the capability to run at full speed on HS2 tracks and then run dual fuel, as it were, on the existing network. So they're what we call classic compatible. So those are the trains that will serve into Stafford, Stoke and onto Macclesfield. I know in previous discussions I've had with various individuals and organisations about the service through the Handsacre link, the question has been raised about why the trains can't continue through from Stoke to Macclesfield and on to Manchester. And my very limited understanding of the service patterns are that Manchester currently does not have the capacity to receive trains through that route, which is why the HS2 service would stop at Macclesfield. Now, I think, and I don't want to put words in Mark's mouth, but I think what Mark is referring to is when there are issues on the network and capacity can be released to enable that route to be used, then it would be used, but not as a regular service. It would effectively be, an emergency service, as it were. So if there is an issue elsewhere, that could be a potential route. But currently, the plans for HS2 classic compatible trains are not to go through Macclesfield onto Manchester, is my understanding. And Mark, you may have a different view.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit clear. So yeah, there is, I suppose, I understand the aspirations to have only HS2 trains, which is once that link to Manchester is provided, which, I mean, that could be very dedicated, but there is going to be a high number of classic compatible trains. And the challenge is there that at the moment, yeah, services will terminate at Macclesfield for the Macclesfield, Stoke, Stafford service on HS2. Potential to extend it to Manchester, which a lot of people are asking for, and that's obviously been asked in Macclesfield, is kind of part of that 30 different options that we're looking at. So it could be extended to Macclesfield, into Manchester, but as Jason pointed out, there's not enough capacity at Manchester. And obviously there's a big event yesterday in Parliament. Well, there's lots of big events in Parliament yesterday, but there was an event there about building a bigger Manchester station, which would enable those kind of aspirations. Or, these are the different challenges, another train could stop at Macclesfield, so the current cross-country train that runs from Reading could end to allow the HS2 one to go through. And then the business challenge is, and the revenue thing and the question to government is, do you want to stop this one or that one? Or do you want to spend more money on infrastructure in terms of allowing both of them to carry on from Macclesfield onwards? So that's why I want to say this timetable that we're working on, the TSS, the train service specification, it's going to be a lot of back and forth on different options. And if you want to do this option, you've got to deliver this kind of infrastructure. And so it's a challenge back to government or the local authorities, if they've got those kind of powers to invest in infrastructure to deliver those kind of things. So it's going to be a long iterative process to come back to what's going to be the third timetable when HS2 services run. And then the big thing now, the operational importance, is that flexibility that it gives to the network. The weekend working, so in October this year, the Trent Valley is going to be down to 2 tracks rather than 4. And there'll be periods when we have to adjust the timetable to undertake that engineering work. You'll know if there's ever an incident on the Trent Valley, that our trains are diverted via Birmingham, which makes the journey longer. But that's the flexibility that that route gives us when things go wrong, rather than just saying there's no trains. So another junction on the HS2 network, such as Handsacre, gives a lot more flexibility to adjust timetables to meet different demands at the time.
Thanks.
David?
Thank you, Chairman. I find it very interesting and quite complex, and certain things that concern me. I'm mostly interested in the West Coast Main Line because HS2 is a waste of time as far as we're concerned. It's faster to go to London on the slow train from Trent Valley than it is to go into Birmingham, catch HS2, and it's far cheaper. So HS2 won't be benefiting from the North Birmingham side of Staffordshire. I find it difficult to understand why the train operators don't recognise that Lichfield Trent Valley Station is an ideal out-of-town station that could be developed to provide the whole of North Birmingham with a superb train service. Now, I think I heard you say that under the new timetable, we're looking at a fast train every hour stopping at Trent Valley. So what then happens to the slow train, which goes every half hour? Are we going to have a massive abundance of trains going to London, or are we going to lose the slow train? If we lose the slow train, we start to work on the assumption that everybody is travelling for business on expenses. And the slow train is a perfect way for people who are not time critical to have a 10-15 minute longer journey, but at half the price. And so I think we seriously need to look at what the community wants rather than what's convenient to train companies. And also, I'm not sure whether it comes into your orbit at all, but the cross-city line, from my division's point of view and from the county's point of view, we've been trying to talk to about problems that we have from stations, and we can't get them to the table. So I find the whole thing very frustrating. Thank you, Chairman.
If I come back, the current London North Railway or West Midlands trains, their hourly service from Crewe along the Trent Valley to London remains. This additional train from Liverpool is a new service. We call it Lichfield and Tamworth because we think there's a market there and demand. And there's also a big demand from Liverpool. That's kind of one of the driving points, is that trains from Liverpool are very overcrowded with only an hourly service. This is the second one. We need places to call as well. Lichfield and Tamworth make great places to call, not only because of their population, but also their interchange opportunities with, so at Lichfield Trent Valley, the cross-city line coming out of Birmingham, and also Tamworth sits on the line between Birmingham and Derby. So there's a lot of operational flexibility and opportunities, not for journeys just from, say, Liverpool to Tamworth, but Liverpool to Tamworth, then on to Derby, because Tamworth provides that place to change journeys. So it's additional, not a removal of the existing service. I can't really talk maybe about the cross country. I think that's maybe West Midlands trains on any issues that we've got on that line, if that's okay.
Any further questions? Ian?
My colleague mentioned a lot about Macclesfield. In 1948, I used to catch the train at Macclesfield and alight at Denston, a little village in Stafford, of course, and go to school there. And then I think the train went on to Toxter and onwards. And it was always full. It was not a corridor train, it was, you know. And if you wanted to go to the toilet, you had to wait till you got somewhere. And then in the forces, we used the trains to go to Oswestry from Manchester. And the main train we use now, living in Staffordshire, is the train that goes from Macclesfield to Stoke, or we used to. And you could get on it at Manchester Piccadilly, and it would stop at Stockport and all the various ones, Poynton, and all the way through to Stoke-on-Trent. Every time we were on that train, it was busy, and it was ideal for shopping, and people used to parcels and God knows what. So I presume that this is the one you're going to discontinue. And Macclesfield used to be the hub. It used to be Manchester Piccadilly. Used to go, Manchester Central used to go all the way down to London Euston, stopping at Macclesfield, picking up there. Again, it appears that may be cut. Are these lines now not used as much as they were? You'll have to excuse me, I haven't used the train for quite some time now. I learnt to drive. But I was just wondering why some of these little bus routes, for want of a better word, that take people shopping and were very, very fruitful, I would say, to the railway systems, why they're being changed, why they're stopping. Doesn't small matter anymore?
They do, it does. I mean, this is maybe a bit of confusion. So the HS2 train that calls at Macclesfield just stops there. There's still the existing services will still run through Macclesfield. I think you've got to remember that HS2 is another layer of services on top of the existing, and the existing services are being amended to reflect that. And that's the kind of the opportunity. So I think I gave the example of Tamworth, and I'll always use Tamworth because it's my hometown, is with the current, the way the network's set up, it's very hard to have more than just 2 trains an hour stop at Tamworth, because it's got to fit in with the existing fast trains that we run already, going towards Liverpool and Manchester. By pushing them onto HS2, there's now more space to play with on the West Coast Main Line in terms of what services could run there. Now, I won't put words into or plans into the mouth of my colleagues who are working out this timetable, but it could mean that Tamworth has more than just 2 trains an hour on the station. It could have 4 trains an hour, and they could be a mix of slow that stop at all the stations, a bit like the West Midlands trains now. It could be a fast direct, like we're proposing from December 22, just running straight from Tamworth onto London. It could be semi-fast. It could stop at a few places along the line, but not as many as the current West Midlands trains. It's working out the timetable for HS2 that I think Jason's talking through there, to make sure that Stafford, Stoke and Macclesfield have direct services. That service is put in. But unfortunately, when it gets to Macclesfield, it can't carry on. All the existing services that still call at Macclesfield and go on to Manchester will still exist. So there's no kind of fundamental loss in services. Sorry, the starting point for my colleagues in West Coast Partnership Development is no one gets a worse service. They get what they get now, but hopefully a higher, with more services on top of it, not a kind of replicate reduction.
Thanks, Mark. Are there any further questions from members? No? Okay. So I'll thank Mark and Jason and Jonathan for your presentation and your time this morning. And we'll look forward to any updates coming forward to this committee in the future. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all.
Okay, we'll move on to item 6, which is the flood risk management update. I believe that is Councillor Simon Tabb and team. bringing the presentation up for you.
It's the fair presentation we need because I'm going to just talk to the report which was given out.
Okay. Yeah.
Good morning, members. In your agenda pack, you will have been provided with a progress report update on the actions for the flood risk management plan, detailing 26 outcomes, which in general are on track or superseded by outcomes where we're actually delivering more than required. One of the main outcomes was to develop a local flood risk management strategy. The last one was published in 2015, but since then we've experienced a number of several flooding events in the county, and the National Direction for Flood Risk Management has also evolved during that time. So it's therefore sensible and timely to update the local flood risk management strategy and also to align that with our new strategic plan, which was agreed at the County Council in February. The new strategy has three principles, and they are to meet our statutory duties relating to obviously national legislation, to work with others to reduce and manage flood risk better, and align with relevant wider strategies, as I say, for example, the new strategic strategy. And we've reduced and refined the 6 objectives in the last strategy down to 5 to make them more focused, ambitious and sustainable. At the moment, it's only in a draft stage, and the point to bring it today to scrutiny is for you as members to have an input into it before it comes to Cabinet later in the year. Key changes include a better policy protecting properties, and working with others on a better plan to respond and recover to flooding, more scope for innovation, maximising opportunities through the strategic planning process, extending our flood investigation threshold to properties that have been flooded internally more than once in a 5-year period, and improving the flood investigation process, more collaborative working with partners such as Severn Trent, the Environment Agency and local borough councils, and to improve flood resilience to communities. And regards that last point, the County Council secured £6 million funding to lead on improving flood resilience using innovation with the Stoke and Black Country flood management area. And the scheme is called FAIR, which stands for Flood Awareness Informed Resilience. And Jamie Cooper, one of our officers who's leading on this, is going to give a presentation on that to you now. So I'll hand over to Jamie, and then we'll obviously take questions after.
Thanks, Simon, and good morning, members. Okay, so Simon's just introduced this. One of the objectives that we've got in our local flood risk management strategy is now exactly this, which is objective 4, a fair approach to community flood risk, as you can see on there. FAIR stands for something, so it means flood aware, informed, resilient, and this all applies to communities using innovation. So how did we get the funding? Well, initially this was announced by government. There was 25 projects, £200 million worth of funding, and we successfully were awarded £6 million for a bid that we put in with Stoke and Black Country authorities. So what does resilience mean? Okay, the Environment Agency defined resilience as the capacity of people and places to plan, protect, respond and recover to flooding. So the traditional, the typical thing that you would go to is to protect against flooding. Resilience includes that, but it goes beyond it to plan, respond and recover also. And we've extended that definition to include active resilience. So those properties that have flooded previously should improve their resilience in future as they go along. And also sustainability. We think that the idea of this being sustainable is important, that communities need to be able to do this for the long term. And the project also aims not to bring about dependencies, okay, on organisations in particular. So the strapline, which we'll be using with communities, is quite simple, I hope, which is that communities and organisations working innovatively together to improve flood risk. So the key thing that we've got the funding for is innovation, and we really want to go to community level because we think that's the appropriate level to work at, working with communities. So that brings us on to the purpose. The purpose is to support communities across the region to become more aware, informed and resilient to flooding, working collaboratively with professionals to better plan, protect, respond and recover in a sustainable way. Okay, so we're working with communities, we want to bring innovation into it, and we want it to be sustainable. The idea behind the FAIR approach, which is the name of this project, is that we aim to make communities resilient, but we ourselves are quite aware and informed that in order to be resilient, you first of all have to be informed of your risk. You need to know the level of risk that you're at. And before you know that, you need to be aware that you are at risk. Okay? So there's different levels that communities are at in that continuum. So these are the partners that we're working with so far. We're obviously working with the Black Country authorities and also Stoke. We've also brought a couple of universities on board, and we're working with the National Flood Forum, who are a charity specialising in community work. So this is where we're at the moment. We've just submitted an outline business case, which we hope will be approved and go through our own internal approval processes by September. That's the aim. We're on track for that at the moment. Okay, going into the detail then, the project a bit more. So this is an overview of the project. First of all, we've split it into a kind of generic thing, which is for the whole of the area, and a targeted approach. So the generic thing is all about things like having an improved website, which will be a one-stop shop for all types of flooding. A lot of the feedback that we get is flooding is not like if you've got a gas leak. There's all different organisations that are involved in flooding. So that's one thing. Improved phone infrastructure communications is another. We want there to be improved forecasting for all types of flooding. At the moment, there is forecasting for main rivers. So if you live next to the River Trent, you may get a flood warning from the Environment Agency. But what about all those additional properties that flood from other sources? And lastly, we want to build in, and this is part of the innovation, machine learning and artificial intelligence, which will link into that forecasting. Second bit, then in green, is a targeted approach. So we will find out through a detailed assessment, including socioeconomic factors, what the key communities are, working with them to then build up what the right tools are or solutions for their area, having funding for small-scale interventions, and also plans so that we know who does what. 5 objectives to the project. The first one is to understand what we mean by risk, what we mean by communities, and develop a framework and infrastructure for our project. So that's really the knowledge and understanding that we need to base first so that we're approaching the right communities. Second objective is to listen to the needs of communities, working with them to develop a web-based, accessible, one-stop tool and communication system. So again, this is about better communications, one place where communities can go, can feed back. It's an interactive thing. The expert and the communities work together closely. Third objective, this is to do with forecasting and warning. So at the moment, as I said, you get forecast, you get warning for main rivers. Do you, as members of the public, get warnings for rain? Do you get warnings for surface water? Do you get warnings for local watercourses? Do you get warnings if you've got a screen next to an ordinary watercourse and it's got a chance of blocking? Okay. This allows communities and organisations to better plan and prepare to floods. Fourth objective is really about the protect side of things. So we have a large part of that funding that we've got is to actually install measures on the ground. Now, some of those might be linked to the forecasting. So if you would put an improved screen on, you could put a camera on and members of the public or public bodies can have a look at it. But it also means things like property flood resilience measures, local measures, highways improvements, natural flood management, which could mean working with farmers, working with landowners, not just to install traditional schemes or swales, bunds, things like that, but also about the farming practices. And then again, this is about working with communities and organisations to work collaboratively together, okay, to install sustainable, effective measures. So the members of the public, communities, have their own knowledge, and experts have their knowledge. Bring those two together, and hopefully we've got a winning formula. And lastly, if the funding that we got was based on DEFRA funding, so this is a national project. One of the aims of that is to learn nationally about flood risk and how we can learn from these projects, ours being one of 25. And so we're bringing in universities to monitor and evaluate the progress with objectives at the end of the project. But also for us, it means that we can continually reflect on what we've done and improve it, and we can bring the academic innovation into that, as well as construction, etc. Okay, lastly, how are we going to do this? So, 3 things. One, as we've said, we're working with various organisations, public, private, and the third sector. We have funded a new team, which will be a more community engagement delivery team, aside to the traditional flood risk team that we've got at the moment. That's DEFRA funded. And then lastly, we will have project governance boards at strategic and operational level, strategically to keep on track and operationally to bring in the right expertise, because this is innovative, as we go along to see what solutions we can bring in. And that, any questions on that? Thanks.
Just before we do that, Madam Chair, just to say thank you, Jamie, for that presentation. The fair, sort of proposals we're developing are really a step change, really, in the way we deal with issues, particularly in our residents should see the difference and the benefits of that. Once that scheme is up and running on the back of the funding, which we're going, bid to receive. I think just on the wider flood risk, tied into our issues of climate change, we know that the weather is changing. We need to model that as part of our new strategy to ensure we know where the next flood issues are going to come. Because the council, another part of my portfolio, is all about planting trees and stuff like that. You can plant trees in various places to ensure that the flooding is more relieved further down and stuff like that. So I think when a lot of these strategies need to come together. I think that's part of this flood risk strategy, is ensure it fits with all the other things we're doing related to climate change, and also the biggest strategies of the council, such as the overall strategic plan.
Thank you both. And before I bring in other members, what work are we doing to work with the Canals and Rivers Trust to dredge our canals and rivers? Because Tamworth floods every year, probably more than once. We're building everywhere possible. And, just in where I live, under the Glasgow Arches, I don't want to make it parochial, but it floods every time it rains. And it's not a little puddle, it's 3-4 foot deep. You can't drive through it, and you certainly can't drive it with an electric vehicle. So for me, you've mentioned about collaborative working on a number of the slides, but Rivers and Canals Trust isn't mentioned. So what work are we doing with them to get them to do their bit, because it's not all on us?
Thank you, Chair. I think also the Environment Agency as well are involved in that. But I'll hand it to Jamie, who will give you more detail on the interaction we have with them and how through the policy we can help to improve some of that.
Yeah, so I think the key thing to say is that the FAIR project is a kind of add-on to what we're doing. So at the moment, the Environment Agency are the main focus because of the forecasting side of things. We, of course, will start working with others, the Canals and River Trust being one, water companies being another, the Environment Agency, the Sound, PENC, IDB. So there's quite a few different organisations in relation to flooding. The key thing is we do work with the Canals and Rivers Trust. Obviously, the model's changed with the Canals and Rivers Trust now that it's become a charity. But we work with the Canals and Rivers Trust, and mostly strategically and also at the operational level. So if we become aware of flooding that's quite significant, and the Canals and Rivers Trust are a key player in that, then we will liaise with the Canals and Rivers Trust to find out what duties and powers they have and ask them what they're going to be doing. So yes, it's important and it's relevant to those where it's floods.
I think also, Chair, on the back of your comments, we can ensure that is increased in the strategy to make that clear as well, I think.
David.
Chairman, could I just start by saying I've had in the last couple of years 4 fairly significant flood issues in my division, and the flood team have been absolutely superb in working with me for how we were able to alleviate that. I find it somewhat frustrating that the Environment Agency on 2 of those flood problems have intervened, delayed the work being done which we have approved, and at the end of it all have said, oh yeah, well we agree that, during which time houses have flooded and things have happened which I could throttle them over the whole thing. I particularly wanted to refer to planning, because it staggers me how we have these great big shed developments and also big housing developments, and particularly on the housing developments, we know that it would be a great benefit to communities if we had grey water lagoons, but none of them have 3 taps, none of them have any facilities where they're reusing water for toilets and whatever else. I find that very frustrating. I find that we ought to be looking at some of these areas where we've got massive flat roofs that create thousands of gallons of water, and we just stick it straight into a ditch and it floods. That I find somewhat stupid, and it seems to me that what we ought to be doing is looking at how we look at water retention and the release of water into the system at a time when it's more practical for that to happen, when it's not raining. So I think that what we're looking at here is super, it's ideal, and I fully support what we're looking at. But I think that we're trying to deal with problems that other people ought to have done something about solving. And I don't see enough being done by other parties that are contributing to the problem. I don't see them doing enough to minimise what we need to do. After all, I find it very frustrating again that some 20 years ago, when I was leader of Lichfield District Council, we were working on a project with the cathedral because the cathedral doesn't have the size and capacity within its network to be able to deal with the sudden falls of rain, and that is causing major problems to the cathedral. Now, we had Birmingham University working with us on that. We came up with reports, and the net result from that is nothing ever happened. And I think that we've got to stop having lots and lots of reports happening and us all sitting on them. So I sit here as an elderly, frustrated councillor.
Simon, did you want to come back on?
Yeah, please. Yeah, thank you for the comments, David. I think you're quite right about that sustainability of new developments, particularly, and Objective 2 within the new strategy will be managing that and being more proactive at the strategic planning stage and the allocation of land, etc., and local plans, which I don't think the County Council has really been sort of at the table at fully, and it should do. For example, in Newcastle, you know, where my division is, we're currently going through a start of a new local plan. Right at the start, you start to think about the allocations for land, and right at the beginning, we need to think about, you know, the possibility of what areas we're putting developments on that may flood. And then you're quite right about the drainage issues and the reuse of water through what, you know, the SUD schemes, sustainable urban development schemes. We've got to make sure that we abide by the regulations that are already in place, and then actually that the actual developers do. There's one in my division where we're still waiting for the SUDs to be signed off on a new housing estate, and it's right next actually to Wallis Quarry, which of course you're aware is the massive issue with odours, but also possibilities of contaminated water going into there and coming out of there. So I'm completely with you on that, Dave. And I think key to this strategy is working at that early stage with planning authorities and developers to offer that advice about that sustainable drainage, and also where we place these developments so that we don't cause a problem in the future or a problem downstream, which is another case for that. So hopefully that reassures you that the strategy is going to be focused on that.
Thanks, Simon. Graham?
Thank you. A couple of points. I absolutely agree with you on the planning issue. I think if we had a map of the very bad areas of flooding, and we did a deal with the insurance companies to say they will not insure any buildings built on that area if it's open land, I just think that that would curtail a development in the worst areas. My second point is, as I'm sure you've all been aware of, matters of sewage being discharged into watercourses. Well, during floods, this is exacerbated probably 50 to 100 times, and you can get absolute massive discharges. Now, the recent programme on television, Environment Agency, is not doing anything whatsoever about that. They're not even fining the companies. Is there any way we can build into this study something about the pollution aspects that flooding might cause? Because I do think it's of concern to the wider population.
Yes, thank you. I think we have the Flood Water Management Act, don't we, of 2010. We've also had moves which have been publicised recently about changes to the way, sewage is discharged. We're going to bring in Jamie, who will give more details on how the strategy can help us on that.
I think it's a really good point, and I think you've alluded to it, that the two obviously main players here are the water companies and the Environment Agency that will regulate that to some extent. There's also Ofwat, but you're right. I think the key word is collaboration here, right? And we recognise that part of the flooding isn't unique. You can't separate the different elements out. The Floods and Water Management Act gives us the capacity to look at flooding. It doesn't define flood as foul water and main rivers, but I think you're right. I think as a team we can certainly work with the water companies, because it's an obvious problem. So there's capacity there, once you're aware of a flood, to understand how that relates to, it's not just the flood height, it's also what's in the flood water. Yeah.
Thanks, Jamie. Bernard?
Thank you, Chair. We can all complain about flooding. It's everywhere. I mean, where you got water courses, you're always going to get flooding. And that is just the same as we have in South Staffordshire. I mean, when you think also that in one area of South Staffordshire where I particularly live, and I'm not trying to promote my own area here, 14,000 houses plus a huge development for industry with a rail hub to serve it will all be in one particular area. The fear is that flooding is going to actually occur at that particular area. What we also have is, of course, the problem that I think some of the farmers have not helped by not digging out the edges of their fields, particularly on main road areas. Because at one time, I'll go back many years, of course, every field, particularly along a major route, it had a ditch, and you didn't have flooding like you're seeing today. I get lots of complaints from my division whereby I'm told it's the field, the water is coming off the field that is flooding the actual road. Can we do anything at all about private property where water constantly comes off the private property onto the main highway to stop that actually flooding that highway and stop all the complaints? Maybe, I don't know whether or not by putting ditches again at the edges of roads would work. But at least it's something that could be done to try to actually stop it, because there's no doubt about it that the number of complaints I receive is huge, and it's generally for flooding, it's coming off the fields.
Yes, thank you for that. I think 2 points really. I think you're quite right about, as David said, we need to ensure future developments don't cause a risk to flooding, but we've got existing ones which have already been either built or are very near in the pipeline that may not have been subject to that sort of rigorous planning process, and we've got to be able to deal with those. So one of the key objectives for this is that we're going to seek funding to ensure we can get schemes in place to mitigate some of that and to ease that. But you're quite right about the farm issue and the runoff onto roads, which is, if David Williams was here earlier, of course, on the highways issue, and he has a lot of complaints from members about flooding of highway coming off private land. I'll bring Jamie in for the detail on that and how we can actually deal with that and respond to your issue particularly.
Yeah, I think we have got to. So there's a difference here, and then there's a difference between highways and ourselves, a flood team. And the main difference is that the flood team focuses on property flooding. That's our main focus. But highways is obviously focus on highway flooding. So the source could be the same, so it could be runoff from a fields. What's affected depends on the different functions, highways or ourselves, or clearly people or roads. And so there's a difference here in terms of the funding. So the scheme side of it, the schemes funding that we get from the Environment Agency and DEFRA is mostly about properties. So the capital funding that we get is about protecting properties. So the schemes that we can deliver, and we have done some, we've worked at Huntington, for example, where we've worked with the landowner to put some interventions on the field to slow it down, okay? And that was about related to property flooding. Now, highways have installed soakaways in different places on the edge of fields to try and help with that. It's difficult in terms of the powers and duties that we have under the Highways Act to do those sort of things. And it's also quite a frequent issue across the county. I think there's definitely a place, and we can explore this with the new team that we've got, which I think is more of a communities thing, to see where we can bridge that, to see if we can reduce those problems that we experience across the county.
I think just further to add, I've had conversation with David Williams as the Highways portfolio, and we've agreed that we will work the two portfolios more collaboratively together on this, because as Jamie says, one affects the other, doesn't it? And there's different highway regulations that come into play. So I've asked officers to set up a joint group so we can look where we've come from on this, what issues have come up in the past, and then what issues arise so we can have a standard approach to them and get these things sorted. Because as you say, for residents and for road users, it's really annoying that water pouring off a private land and we can seem to not be able to do anything about it or get caught between different responsibilities. So let's see how we can circumvent that and get things done.
Thanks both. I'm all for collaborative working, especially if we're going to look at when we cleanse our gullies as well, because the water has to go somewhere, and if it can't get down the drain, it's going to stay on the surface of the road. So, David, did you want to come back in?
Only really perhaps to defend David Williams. I've had long discussions with David over the problems of ditches, and he has a strategy at the moment where we are working with farmers to clear ditches. It's clearly the farmer's responsibility, and they've got blocked up, and he's doing things to actually get those cleared. It'll be a long job, but I'm confident that David is actually doing that.
Thank you, David. Ian, quickly.
A very naive thought, but one thing Stafford has got is miles and miles, thousands of miles of underground ex-coal mines, all empty spaces, just waiting to be filled with water. I was wondering if there's any way we can start, I can't see it being terribly expensive, diverting the water down.
They're already full.
They're already full?
Yes.
Oh. I haven't been down lately, so I'm sorry.
It's a point well raised, but I think, as a member just said, I think a lot of them do naturally flood anyway. But I'll just bring Jamie in if there's any option for any use of underground capacity, because we do have a water table that's as obviously a natural springs, etc.
Yeah, we have worked with coal boards. I think you're right. I think there's potential there. A lot of them have been filled, but I think it may be difficult to do that strategically, but certainly with local knowledge and working with people locally, I think we can explore that at that level.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, Simon. Thanks, Darryl. No further questions. I'll thank the gentlemen for their presentation and time this morning, and for members' input. Thank you, guys. You're free to leave. So we move on to item 7, which is the work programme. So the work programme continues at a rate of knots. So we've done today's meeting. So the next meeting is Thursday the 29th of September. I thought you might like August off. So on the September meeting, we've currently got the North Staffordshire Local Air Quality Plan, the Schools White Paper, and that's it. So as agreed...
Chairman, highways transformation as well.
Oh, sorry, yeah, and highways transformation. And obviously at the last meeting we agreed to move Councillor Wilson's reports all into one meeting for October. So that will be the Victoria Wilson show with, I think there's a report from Philip White on there as well. Yeah, economic recovery, renewal and transformation. Okay, so everybody happy with the work programme going forwards? David?
Going to look at the fact that we were invited to attend the climate change working group. The last meeting didn't happen. The chairman's resigned. What are we... I mean, the climate change working group has gone to the wrong committee. It should come to this one. But it's not doing anything. And what we should be doing is looking at the distant vision of what may happen as opposed to the things which the officers are currently doing. And I don't see that committee progressing in any way whatsoever. I mean, the change in the role of the overview and scrutiny committees, that one vice chairman takes responsibility for overview and the other one for scrutiny. That overview role that they should be taking and the visioning is not happening within that committee. And I think that we should be making strong representations.
Thanks, David. That's something we can take up outside of this meeting. Yep. Obviously, Peter is new to the committee, so he's taking notes and learning as he goes along. Yep. So we'll pick that up outside of here and speak to the leader about who he wants to put there. So we'll deal with that outside of this meeting.
Okay.
So all that leaves me, we haven't got anything under confidential. Sorry, Graham.
Can I just note, we've got nothing in for the December meeting, but I'll be skiing when it's on. So can you take my apologies for the December meeting, please? Thanks.
No one said you can take a holiday. I gave you August off. So if there's nothing else, I'll close the meeting at 11:43 this morning, and thank you all for your attendance and bid you a safe journey home. Thank you.